Hello and welcome to this episode of Motherhood Made Magic. Today I am speaking with Naomi C. Naomi is a postpartum doula with a focus on food and nourishment from Sydney, New South Wales. She hosts one brilliant podcast, Tales from the Fourth Trimester, and is an Instagram whiz. She has over 7,000 followers, and when you check out her account, it's not hard to see why. Welcome, Naomi.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, we might start by getting you to just introduce yourself a bit, please.
Sure. I am a mum of two, and as you said, I live in Sydney. Might be moving out of Sydney sometime soon. We've just sold our house, but yeah. But for now, I am in Sydney. I'm a postpartum doula. I was a journalist for over 10 years, and then I had my first daughter, and things changed and shifted for me, and I felt called to have a career change and become a postpartum doula. So that's what I do now. I've just had my second baby 7 months ago, so I'm sort of just coming back from maternity leave, starting to do a little bit of work again. And yeah, I live with those two and my cat and my fish and my husband here in our little house.
Beautiful. Now, a lot of people start doing postpartum work after they have a pretty rubbish first experience. What was your experience like first time around becoming a mother?
Yeah, look, I think I probably fit into that camp. I was completely underprepared for my postpartum. I put a lot of effort into birth and a lot of effort into having a beautiful room ready for my daughter, and a lot of effort into what's the best car seat, what's the safest cot, all of those sorts of things. But I went in with the idea that, well, I've been around babies before. My mum used to be a midwife before I was born and had kind of taken on an unofficial midwifery doula role within, her friendship community.
Wow.
And so I'd always kind of grown up with little babies kind of being passed around. So I just assumed that I was confident and capable, and I'm also quite type A, and if my sort of life motto is, you just chip away and work hard at something and it just kind of works out for you if you put in enough of the hard yards. But my daughter came into the world to teach me that actually, no, that's not always the case. And she was in charge, and what she wanted went. Like, I thought that I would be all about having a routine. I quite like structure in my life. I do really well with schedules. She, did not want to borrow any of that. It was a very unsettled baby. I had a difficult birth. I was induced. I had gestational diabetes. I was induced. I kind of went along with the system and how they handle gestational diabetic women. And I found myself coming out of birth feeling like I'd been through a battle. So I was completely rocked and shaken mentally and physically. And then I had this very unsettled little baby who would scream the house down every evening, and was, she'd sleep during the day and stuff, but wasn't a fan of sleeping at night for longer than 45 minutes at a time.
That's
and
hard.
I was just like, what is this? This is not what I thought it would be like, even to one iota. I remember around the 4-month mark, that was when I was like, oh, this is sort of getting towards what I imagined maternity leave would be like in my head. But there were some things along the way that made a massive difference for me. Like, I think it really shows you who is going to be there for you when shit gets real, and who's not, and who wants to be there for you but maybe is not the right kind of support. And also I discovered bed sharing, which really, like, with a kid who slept 45 minutes at a time, was really the only thing that saved my sanity. There's one point where I was sort of hallucinating in the middle of the night. My husband I sort of woke up and I was sitting up in bed, and my husband was going, "What? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'd been rocking as if I'd been rocking the baby, and the baby was in the bassinet. So I was losing my mind, and I actually ended up being diagnosed with postnatal anxiety, because I had this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach through the day, and particularly as the sun started to go down around like 5 o'clock in the evening. She was a winter baby. I'd start feeling so panicky and sick about what was to come. The tears in the evening, the screaming, the overnight. It was just awful. So I had the first 3 months were really, really hard for me, and I think shook me even more because I felt like I should be coping, and I felt like I am, typically the sort of person who just kind of gets on with it and just makes it work, and I couldn't make it work. I also hadn't sort of surrendered at that point. I was still fighting it a lot. So yeah, that's in a in a nutshell, was my first postpartum with my daughter, and just really opened my eyes to how hard it is to go through a massive transition to motherhood, and to suddenly be responsible for a tiny human. And yeah, I think having a tricky baby first time round gave me a real insight into how hard it can be. I mean, she's not as hard as I've heard. And fortunately, we didn't have any medical issues or anything like that. But yes, I came out of that going, oh, I've just been initiated into a whole new world, which I didn't even know existed, which was both amazing and terrifying.
Oh, it's so full on, isn't it? And a lot of what you're saying there really speaks to my heart and to my experience. And I too remember that relief of going, I can't do cot anymore. My daughter just doesn't cot. Like there is no way that I can function without learning to bed share safely. And to go in and do that background and go I probably similar to you, I would have been quite type A, relatively routine, and going, I need something to give here. And when I learned that when certain criteria are met, that bed sharing can be just as safe as sleeping in a cot for the baby, I just it was a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I remember I found that out, but it took me a while to actually surrender to it. I remember
Why do you think that was?
Oh, I think because I still have that issue with being a bit of a good girl, people pleaser, play by the rules. And I think there was this sense that, but she should be in the cot, and somehow I was failing if she wasn't in the cot.
Yeah.
And my mum, I remember at one point, made the extremely unhelpful comment of, oh, it's lazy. You're just being lazy when you bed share, which is so not the case, obviously. But, I think there were all kinds of cultural messages that I had just bubbling up. Well, they should be in the cot, and they should be. And even though my midwife, I think on my home visiting midwife on maybe week 2 had said to me, you should look into bed sharing, read James McKenna's research, this is how you do it safely, just consider it, and I kind of went, oh,
some babies respond to that, and some babies go really well in a cot, and some babies don't,
and some don't.
We have to roll with that.
That's right, they're not robots. They don't all follow the same thing. They're humans, and like us, they're all different. But it definitely took me a while. I remember we bought this expensive different bassinet which kind of swings into the bed, so it's sort of in the bed with you, and of course she still hated it. So I tried to do all these different things, and then finally, probably around a month in, I was like, okay, we're just going to do this. And it was such a game changer. She still had the evening, I guess, they call it colic when they don't know what else it is, that sort of purple crying. But just to be able to bed share and feel like that was not only okay, but good for her and beneficial for her, because I could see how much more settled she was when we did that, was really, really unbelievably helpful.
Yeah. Now, you and I know what we're talking about here with a few of the names and terms that we've been using so far. But what I might do is make sure that when we do the show notes for this episode, I'm going to provide some links to James McKenna and his research around, I think his term is breast sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah. And purple crying as well. So
Yes.
they're really very useful resources if you're finding that you have an unsettled baby that you need to still be able to figure out how to get some sleep for you and your family. So
yeah, absolutely.
do you think that was a bit of a turning point with the postnatal anxiety, or did that kick on for a while longer?
No, it kicked on for a while longer. So it was sort of went in highs and lows. I remember it came about at about 2 weeks postpartum. So I'm just walking in to pick up my baby. He just woke up. Hello. It went really bad at around 2 weeks postpartum. And then it got better and we were bed sharing and getting sleep. And that was just so much better. And then around 6 weeks, I don't know what happened, whether there is a hormonal shift at 6 weeks. So I feel like it could be connected to that.
There's also often a bit of a feeding frenzy.
Yeah, I don't remember, but that's definitely could have been the case. And it came back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And I didn't actually, I think it's nearly 5 years ago now, so I'm trying to remember the chronology of it. At some point I went and talked to first of all, I called the Panda helpline, because I'm all over the shop, but I actually called around some friends who'd had babies. So none of my close friends had babies at that point, but I had people that I'd worked with who'd had babies, and I used to work in women's magazines. So I called like 3 of them and I was like, what is going on? What is this? Why do I feel so bad? I feel so bad. I'm so stressed out. And one of them, she was like, I had postnatal anxiety. I understand how you're feeling. Call the Panda helpline, which is what I did. I called them a couple of times actually. They're amazing. I just literally sobbed on the phone to them while standing outside so I didn't scare my husband. And the lovely woman on the end of the line, who was a counsellor, she gave me some kind of immediate strategies that I could use when I felt myself spiraling into anxiety. And she also kind of gave me a bit of an action plan in terms of, okay, I'm going to talk to your GP. Here are some psychologists who specialise in, birth trauma and this and that and the other. And I found them incredibly helpful. So yeah, I think definitely the bed sharing helped over the longer term. And certainly if I'd started doing it earlier in that first month, it would have made a bigger difference, because I didn't do it until about a month in. But it didn't totally get rid of the anxiety.
Yeah, because it's a complex thing. It's not just the sleep deprivation. It's the whole works of everything. So Panda is Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Australia. And they're an organisation that has a national phone line. So by Eastern time zones, they run 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Monday to Saturday. And I'll include their number on the show notes as well. It's a number that you and I both recommend for our clients to keep on speed dial. They are guardian angels for.
They really are.
And also for fathers and for anyone involved in the caregiving of a baby.
Yes, anyone can call
during babyhood and childhood for parents. So how then did you find your way into postpartum work, and how did you go from your background in journalism to becoming the postpartum chef that everyone wants a piece of?
That's very nice of you to say. Well, I actually went back to a writing job when I was 7 months postpartum. I got a phone call when I was 4 months from my old employer, which was Marie Claire magazine, who I'd worked for 3 years prior. And they said, we're looking for a feature editor. Can you come back next month? And I said, no, I can't. And I've just had a baby and, I'm not looking for a full-time role. And they said, well, what if we could push it back until, you know, baby's 7 months old and you just came in for 2 days a week. And then maybe after the baby's 1, we could talk about 3 days a week. And I said yes. And I was very apprehensive about doing it. But when the time came, I actually found those 2 days getting back into an office, thinking about something other than the baby, really good for me. And I really enjoyed it. So my daughter was with my mum for those 2 days a week. And yeah, I was in that writing role for quite a while. At some point, once I'd gone back to work, I had a good friend who got pregnant. And I love cooking for people. Food is my love language. And I've always cooked for people who've had babies. And I've always kind of been the one to bring muffins into the office and that sort of thing. And also I'd had the example of my mum, who, as I said, was kind of like an unofficial doula for her community. She would always drop off food to people. She would always make them pate, and she'd tell me, well, that's because you need the iron after you've had a baby, and I'm making them a spinach and feta pie because that's got a lot of iron in it and it's really easy to eat when it's cold. And so I had kind of that example growing up, and it was just something that in my family, that's just what you do. You take people who've had babies food. So this good friend of mine got pregnant, and I saw that the first 40 days cookbook had come out. And I was like, that looks great. I'm going to get myself a copy of that so I can cook her some stuff from it. When I sat down to read it, and I read all of the information around, different cultures who look after women after they've had a baby, and cultures who encourage people to rest for 40 days, and cultures where bed sharing is the absolute norm, and all this functional food. When I was a journalist, I was the wellness editor at Marie Claire, and that I've always been really interested in, you know, food as medicine. So all this stuff made me go.
You've got, you know, you've been working in a women's magazine, specializing in food, had a baby, and it takes until after this to realize how these things are connected with new mothers. That's insanity.
I know. And it was only when I actually read that book and I just was so furious. I was like, I have been, and everyone else that I know has been ripped off. We are getting ripped off in this culture. Why have we lost this skill of mothering the new mother? Why? Oh my God, how much different would my experience have been if I had had that kind of support? Because I should say my mum, she is great in many ways and good at being like, yes, I'll bring you a pot of minestrone and some chicken liver pate, but she also is terrible at emotional support. So, you know,
everybody's got their strengths, right?
Everyone's got their strengths. So I kind of like went, oh my God, why is this not happening? And I want to do this for other people. I need to do that for myself, for Australia, because I felt like there was no one actually doing it here. There was stuff happening in the US. Postpartum care seemed to be more of a thing over there. And I had been living in LA for 4 years before I had my baby. But I hadn't even thought that I had seen postpartum doulas, but I hadn't even really understood what they did. And I felt like, oh, well, I don't need that. I'll be fine.
That's a luxury.
Lol. So, you know, I kind of came out of reading that book and went, okay, I've found my new career. Because I had been thinking I wanted to do something different anyway. And I still wanted to do some writing, which I still do to this day. But I was a bit overworking in magazines. So, yeah, but it still took me, I have to say, after that, 18 months and a whole different job. I then took another job on a different magazine while I was training to be a postpartum doula, and also I was ghostwriting a book for someone. So there was a lot happening over this 18 months when I was training up to become a postpartum doula and getting my website in order and getting my insurance and, you know, all of those back end things.
Meantime, you're raising a child.
Meantime, raising a very feisty little toddler. So, I actually quit my job in magazines at the end of 2018, and the beginning of 2019 I launched my business. And I had to launch my business then because my old yoga teacher said, I'm having my third child and I need you to be my postpartum doula, so hurry up and finish your training, get qualified, because you're hired. So her baby was born in January of 2019 and I was her postpartum doula, and that's where it all kicked off from.
Wow. Quite a journey, isn't it? And I know every mother has their own journey, but our passions are so aligned, and I love hearing how you've come to this point. You and I have trained under the same postpartum doula teacher,
Yes.
Julia Jones. I am always referring back to the First 40 Days cookbook by Heng, and that was one of the things that I did preparing for my postpartum as well, was to fill my freezer with all of the beautiful like broths and soups and things from her cookbook. It's just so brilliant that this area is being recognized and that there are people to feel it. And I feel like you're a bit of a trailblazer in that area, and your social media is so strong. I know you had a little bit of I want to say a go slow, but just a redirection of your energies towards your own postpartum period. But what do you do about getting the message of this mama care to the mums who are going to need it before they're in the depths? Like how does the work you do prevent falling through the gaps that so many of women in Australia have experienced?
I mean, a lot for me is about having the conversations, and that's really why I wanted to start my podcast, because I felt like a lot's discussed around birth, which is great. Birth's really important, but it is just the beginning. And I felt like we weren't hearing about postpartum, the good and the bad. I mean, I got such a shock because I really didn't understand what I was in for. And so I wanted to start the podcast around that. And I also do a lot of talk on my social media around, my own experience and people that I know who were pregnant and thinking that it would all just kind of work out. So that for me is part of, I hope, a small contribution in changing the culture and the conversation around how we look at postpartum and just the awareness of postpartum. And I've had lots of sort of friends who either about to get pregnant or pregnant, or even people who are not pregnant or planning to be pregnant, but saying to me, oh my gosh, I now understand, I've stocked my freezer, or I offered to walk my friend's dog, she's just had a baby. So I just try in my social media to talk a lot about things that actually help, and things that are useless, things of thinking about support over stuff, and sort of educating people around, the fact that they're going to need boundaries. And so I do that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, in my work with clients, I help them, we start working together during pregnancy, where we do planning sessions that are all about, okay, let's set you up for the best possible start. And that looks different for everyone because everyone's circumstances are different. But we always talk about, there's always commonalities. There's usually, what are the relationships that are going to challenge you, and how can we set some boundaries and have some difficult conversations before the baby's here and you're really raw and vulnerable.
That's an important one.
It's really important. And food, that's always massive. I like to help. I cook for my clients usually. I'm not doing that at the moment, but I help people set up meal trains. I help them stock their pantry, all of that kind of stuff as well. So that's kind of part of the service that I offer, is postpartum planning sessions, to encourage people to spend some time planning their postpartum, because most people don't they plan for a lot around birth. They plan a lot around maternity leave. They plan, we plan so much for our weddings. We plan so much for, what pram are we going to buy? But we don't really think about planning for postpartum. So I try and encourage people to do that. And then, the actual someone being there and having their back as a non-judgmental sounding board and support person from when they have their baby, who can kind of offer evidence-based, up-to-date support and advice, and just kind of reassure
around
them
in the local area too, to go like, this seems pretty normal, but if something doesn't feel right for you, the person who you might like to speak to is this international board certified lactation consultant. She's wonderful. She'll come to your house. Here's her number. If you get in trouble, she'll be with you in a day. It makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
So you provide some of these services in Sydney, and I'm doing a very similar thing up around Lake Macquarie and Newcastle. And when we were speaking last time, you were talking about possibly doing some remote mentoring work as well. Is that something that's happening, Naomi?
Yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment, I am actually, I've got a 7-month-old, and I have just started offering virtual doula services. So I am doing postpartum planning sessions and a virtual doula support service where I'm in your pocket for 40 days. You can contact me at any point. We do weekly check-ins, and we're in touch constantly for the first 40 days of the baby's life. And yes, I am going to be doing some doula mentoring. I'm actually going to be running a workshop, which isn't specifically for doulas, but it's going to be in August, all about how to write for your small business. So
beautiful.
Yeah, because I still write. I love writing, and I get a lot of people asking me, well, how do you do your social media? How do you know what to write? And I just don't know. And it is pretty daunting. So I want to share what I've learned around writing for your website, getting a website that really explains properly what it is that you do and encourages people to actually, get in touch with you and buy your services, as well as having an online presence on social media that kind of goes beyond just an impersonal, Instagram page that looks nice, and actually having an authentic voice. So I'm going to be launching that workshop.
How exciting.
In August.
I think that's really wonderful to mention too, because I think for a lot of women who are considering a career diversion into more maternal support roles, it almost feels like they're putting their old career in a bin, and it's not the case. Like, we bring our skill set with us. Like, you're involving your work with writing and journalism and all your skills there. And I just did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, tying together like exercise physiology and women's health with the doula support work as well. And when we bring these other skill sets to the world of doulaing or lactation consultant or whatever it is, then we're really boosting up the credentials of those professions, because we're all teaching and learning from each other. And it's so nice to be in a more feminine workplace model that cheers each other on, rather than like trying to trample each other on a ladder.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I just think it's really, what makes me sad is seeing people who, not necessarily doulas, they might be, anyone who's in some kind of, doing some kind of fantastic job. They really know their stuff. They're incredible at what they do, but no one knows about them, because these days it's all about, people go, oh, okay, I've been recommended someone, but unless you've got 5 word of mouth recommendations, people are going to go on your Instagram and look at what you do. And if there's nothing there, or if there's something there that they go, oh, that's really weird, or, that sounds odd, they're not going to hire you. That's the world that we're kind of living in now. So I really want to help people move beyond from just being great at their jobs to actually helping people get to know them and discover them, because otherwise what's the point?
Yeah, because your social media and your website are a chance for people to build rapport with you before they even know that you exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's the know, like, trust factor. You can't, people, until they know you, they're not going to like you, and until they like you, they're not going to trust you. It's part of how marketing works. So yeah, I'm really excited to be getting into that, because that's kind of the other thing that I'm really kind of into is writing and all of that side of things. So yeah.
Naomi, where can we find you?
You can find me most often on Instagram. I am at Cocoon by Naomi, and you can also find me on my website, which is cocoonbynaomi.com, which is COCOON. It's a hard one to spell. Everyone always misspells it, including me. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
All right. Thank you so much for the chat, Naomi. And
Thanks,
we will speak
Anna.
again soon.
I'm sure we will. Thanks so much for having me. Bye.
I hope you loved listening to this episode as much as I loved recording it. If you want to find out more about what I do, you can head to my website, www.annacusack.com.au. Find my book, Mama, You're Not Broken, Unmasking the Unspoken Emotions of Modern Motherhood on Amazon. Find me on Facebook at Anna Cusack, Complete Mama Support, or follow me on Instagram at annacusack Postpartum. Please remember to hit subscribe on this podcast and give it a 5-star rating if you feel called. See you next time.